Welcome to the Consulting Leaders Podcast, where we talk about the business of consulting. Whether you're looking to grow your practice or learn from the stories of leaders in consulting, you're in the right place. I'm your host, Guillaume Jouvencel, ex-PwC and co-founder of GHA Marketing. Join me as I interview the best consultants in their niche. Let's get on with the show. Leyla, welcome to Consulting Leaders. Happy to have you.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for having me. Great to be here.
Let's jump straight into it. What led you into building Diverse Minds UK, and how did your early experience in large institutions shape the kind of practice you wanted to create?
Yeah, so what led me into building my business was I wasn't going to get anywhere actually in a traditional office environment for lots of reasons. I think that anyone who knows my work will know that I talk a lot about anti-racist practice and institutional racism. So I think one of the things is that you can get to a certain point, but your face doesn't fit. The other reason is that people kept approaching me and saying, oh, you're doing this sort of work, you're doing this, we can't get any platform in our organization. Will you come and talk to us about how you did it? And so from there, I would go and do talks, and my manager said to me, oh, you can go, but if you get any money, it's got to go into the departmental budget. I said, fine. And we would spend that on away days, etc. And then it kept happening. So I took annual leave and it kept happening. And I thought, oh, maybe there is something in here. And in terms of large institutions, I think, yes, it's helped me shape the kind of practice that I want by being completely different to that and being a solopreneur and thinking that you don't have to build these big organizations that become quite unwieldy in order to make change and get the results that you want.
So I think that's a leading kind of the next question as well. Tell us a bit more about the number one problem that you're solving now. Like, what is it that you help, institutions, your clients achieve?
Yeah, it's creating equal, happy and mentally healthy workplaces so that people can be productive, they can do what they need to do, they're able to have a harmonious workplace community. And I'm not necessarily a fan of this whole bringing your whole authentic self to the workplace, because you can't always do that. It's also not safe for everyone to do that. But what we can do is build a positive workplace community so that people can work together to achieve aims and be able to have a positive working environment.
Who is it that you help with this? Like, do you have any niche, industry, like typical company size? Who typically gets help from you?
Yes, so my background's in higher education, so a lot of my clients are still in that sector, but I have worked with lots of different organizations, and I would say size is a really good way to look at it actually, because often when people ask me which sector is it, I can say HE, but actually I've also worked with a lot of fashion companies, which makes me laugh because that's really not my area. A lot of engineering firms. So I would say it's medium enterprises, medium organizations, between 1,000 and potentially 5,000-6,000 people. Sometimes more, obviously institutions can be much larger than that. But often within big organizations, thinking about ideal customers, it's a specific area of that big organization. So it might come through the learning and development team, it might come through the HR department, it might come through equality and diversity, it might come through an operational area. Sadly, it's often when there's been an issue, and I'd love it to be proactive rather than reactive, but that is the reality.
So this is going to be a very interesting one, because we're going to talk about this kind of pre and post incidents, and like at what different stages your clients might be in their journey and when they typically take action. I want to talk about this marketing wise. Before we get there though, who typically makes the decision of hiring you, Leyla? Like, I understand the targets, like who's the decision maker in the process?
Yes, and I think that's a really helpful and great question to ask. So I'm going to answer it in two ways. One is who I wish was the ultimate decision maker. I really wish it was the chief operations officer, because I think the reason I say that is it would be much more embedded in corporate organizations. Who tends to be the chief decision maker will either be the people team or whatever they call it, HR people team, sometimes learning and development. I really love working with learning and development, but often they don't always have to say they need to. But yes, sometimes it can be. So it comes from that area, which is fine. But as I said, it's not as embedded as it could and should be.
Why do you think is that?
I think it's still, this area of work is still seen as a nice to have, or, oh, sugar. Going back to what you were saying, we need to react to something. So that's the people team, it's over there. We're too busy doing operations. That sits over there. I still don't think there's a joint up approach in terms of, if you want clean as in effective and efficient operations, you need to be always integrating people, interactions and culture into that.
That does make a lot of sense. So tell me about how you communicate all this, how you market, how you brand. And I think let's start with the pre-incident, right? Because I suspect there's going to be like an education kind of content strategy to be had, a problem awareness, right? Kind of approach, solution awareness, and then getting people to say like, yeah, I need to book a call and a chat with Leyla. So how do you think about this? Like the post incidents, or sugar, or like, whatever, priority number 18. How do you go about all that?
Yeah, what a great question. And you know what? I find this fascinating because I've had my business for 8 years now. And when I started, I didn't know any of this. So I started from the beginning. I didn't have a marketing background. I was very much in situ. People know you from the organogram in an organization. So it definitely started as word of mouth. So word of mouth, I guess that's the kind of how people hear of me. But in terms of the question you're asking, I think there are actually two routes. I think one, the proactive side is people who really care about a cause. So maybe they've worked in another organization, or they have personal experience, lived experience, and they know that there could be some problems coming up, and they think, you know what, before this is a problem, before this turns into a complete nightmare, let's just look at this in a positive way. So let's get some inclusive leadership program. Let's just upskill all our managers in mental health and wellbeing, because why not? Nothing's going wrong, everyone's quite happy, but actually we can make it even better. So that's one avenue. Then the other avenue is, oh my goodness, we might be going to tribunal. The first question a employment tribunal will ask in the UK, one of the first questions is, what training was provided? We better do this because this is looking a bit ropey. Quick, let's everyone call round, do the shouting out, ask people in our organisation, ask people outside, let's get on our membership list, start firing off the emails, and it's all firefighting approach. And then that becomes, their strategy becomes, who's the cheapest, and it's a race to the bottom. And so I'll often say to people, it's absolutely fine if you want to go with someone else, no problem. I'm not the cheapest, and I'm not the cheapest for a number of reasons, but I appreciate that you're under it. This is and you can come back to me if you like, but there are lots of people who do what I do for cheaper, and you will experience the way they do things, and I leave it at that.
Radical. I like it. So it's so funny. I recently recorded an episode with one of our clients, and we talked about the fact that she was putting out a lot of content, and she couldn't get people to book a call with her. She was like talking about the right stuff. She had the right ICP in mind and creating content for the right ICP, but she wasn't getting them to book a call. And it's because, I think she won't mind because she recorded the episode. So she's a lactation coach. And so she helps women with breastfeeding. And she was like, I was putting content out there for pre and postnatal. And when we started working with her, we were like, cool, let's look at the stats. And the thing is that the content was kind of performing the same. Pre and postnatal was performing the same. But then when we look at retention and actions taken after listening, the ones that we're talking about postnatal stuff, we're getting so much higher engagement. And we're like, interesting. Why is that? Well, it's because they're experiencing the pain right now. Like before that, they were in information gathering stage. Now they're like, oh, sugar, I have a problem. And then therefore they were taking action. So how do you, because there is a point to this whole explanation, what do you, Leyla, put in place to, educate the right people, but also have the right triggering content or call to action, either because people have experienced something and now they're like, okay, we need to do something about mental well-being, diversity, everything that's you help people with. Like, how do you make people take action so that they're like, yes, we're going to talk and walk with Leyla?
Yes, so I guess there are a couple of things that the way in which people find me, and that goes back to content. And I don't put out lots and lots of content anymore. I put out enough. So I have blogs, so people can often find me through the blogs, which is what I did in my first year of business. So essentially what I did is I took key awareness days that linked to the work that I do and created blogs. Then the second year of business, from those blogs, they turned into the podcast, and that was year one of the podcast. And now the podcast was weekly for 5 years, the Diverse Minds podcast. It's now fortnightly. And it touches on now sort of themes, things that are going on, and awareness. And at the end, the call to action is, if you want to create a mentally healthy and positive workplace, do get in touch with me. This is the kinds of things I do. And I think also, even if people aren't ready to use me, so sometimes people will be podcast listeners for 2 years, and then they say, oh, I've got the budget, or I've got the sign off, or yes, we definitely need to do this. They'll get in touch. And the other thing is word of mouth. So as much as I was saying, I was being a bit tongue in cheek and saying, people get on the firefighting line, quick, let's go to our networks. That is a lot of my work is through referral. We've had Leyla come in and do this. If you're struggling, we would really recommend her. And I think often in the people and culture space, because of the sentiment of risk and blame, if there's a trusted name, people are much more likely to reach out and go for you, even if your prices are higher.
Amen to that. Tell me a bit more about how you move that. So how you move that initial, awareness, views, engagement, to an actual sales conversation. Like, how do you get people to book a call with you? How do you go from an initial call to, definitely some ground for us to, discuss further, maybe a second, third call, SOW, letter of engagement. What does the sales motion look like for you, Leyla?
Yeah, and again, I find these questions so helpful because I don't know if I do take enough time to think about them. And I do have my flow chart here behind me. I do have my sales flow chart, but often it's quite organic. So let's think about this. Thinking about second, third calls, I really do try and stop those in their tracks. So one thing I try and do is streamline it. So if we start, let's say I get a vague email. So we've got two or three ways to do things. Number one, it might be an email that someone sends me and says, I'm kind of interested in this, da, 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 da. So I will then say, okay, that's great. Have a listen to the podcast on the themes you've mentioned, so you get an approach of my work. And then when you're ready, you can book a call. That's one avenue. The second avenue is the inquiry form on my website, and people have to actually fill in their budget. And then if their budget is below what I offer, they'll get an automatic email saying, if you can think about increasing your budget, get back in touch and book a call. If you can't, here are the free resources. And then the third way is actually someone might just want to speak to me straight off. They book a call on Calendly, and then they also get a form to fill out. So I'm also always qualifying those calls now, because in 2020, I had my fingers burnt so badly with time wasters. Then we have the half an hour call, and they filled out their form. So I'm ready. I know where they are. And I say, you've written this, 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 and this. So how ready are you? Well, one of the questions on my form is, what's your readiness between 1 to 5, where 1 is not ready at all and 5 is everyone's completely prepped and we're ready to go. So I know where someone's sitting and I know their budget. So that's very helpful. So then from that call, I do one proposal and I send it on Adobe, where they have to sign it. Because also what I've had is a lot of people wasting my time and not looking at the proposal. They don't look at it within 7 days, it gets deleted, and they've got to start the process again, which maybe sounds like, well, you're cutting off opportunities. But actually what I found is it saves me time, and it helps me focus on the clients who are there and who have already committed to the work. And then if someone once they sign that, and we might have another quick 10-minute call, I'll send them the terms and conditions with the finalized dates, and off we go. So I try and keep it as succinct as possible. Now, I do have a customer relation management system that I use, and if someone hasn't followed up, I will email them a couple of times, I'll phone them, and if I don't hear from them, I don't keep chasing, I delete and move on and say, I haven't heard from you. It's absolutely fine if you've chosen another provider. I really welcome feedback, constructive feedback too, so let me know. And most of the time you don't hear anything, it's like being ghosted. But yes, that's the approach I've developed, and I have to say it took me a good 2.5, 3 years to develop that. And I also think, I don't know whether you've seen this, Guillaume, but the lead times have just increased and increased and increased. I used to be able to have a phone call to delivery in 4 weeks. Now you're looking at 4 months.
Okay, there are so many things that we need to follow up on here, because this is extremely good. So first of all, kudos to you, Leyla, because a lot of people I talk to, they they don't have all this figured out. It's just like, I take a call and see what happens.
No.
So yeah.
No.
I like and it's funny because I've talked to so many people who are like, I don't want to sound pushy. I don't want to make it feel like, I'm forcing their hands whatsoever. Creating scarcity so that you get people to take action. And this is assuming that your product is good and that you're genuinely able to help people, right? Obviously, I'm putting
yeah.
you're doing this
Absolutely.
to scam people. This is not good. But assuming that, getting people to take action when there is clearly a problem that they cannot fix, and that the only thing it will take to actually fix it is to take action, which sometimes is scary, right? That's basically fear of aversion for loss. I like a little scarcity. For you, it's like the 7 days. I would even say what I like to do and what I help my clients implement is making the proposal in the call itself, so that you can not sign right away, because that's usually not what's going to happen in the B2B consulting space, but at least handle objections, see the reaction, understand what their mind is going through. To the lead time, to your point, 100%. I think that's due mainly to the fact that anybody can claim anything on the internet nowadays. And it has never been easier to put content out there. It has never been easier to look like an expert, and people get, I'm out of a call recently. We're not going to work with the person. And it's like, he's been burned 4 times over the last 2 years. And it's just like, it's not worth the thing. Like, I'd rather stagnate than take another risk. And I'm like, well, I'm sorry, I couldn't make you see that this could help. But that said, lead times have increased just because trust is so much harder and longer to build. The good news is, because there is a good news in my opinion, Leyla, it's hard for everyone. Meaning, if you find a way to build that trust and to actually get that engagement, eventually you're gonna end up winning. End of the closing the parenthesis. That was a long parenthesis, but all this to say, I really like your process. Next step, you've engaged with someone, you started working with them. How do you retain? How do you keep on, working with the same clients? Once you fix the diversity problem, it's fixed, right? So tell us, what do you do to, make the most out of a client relationship?
Yeah, it's a great point, isn't it? And I wish hand on heart, I really do wish this. In many ways, and I mean this nicely, my business shouldn't exist, not because of draconian opinions, but because people should know how to do this stuff. But sadly, that's not the case, and we've got a lot of stuff going on out there in the world that, of course, impacts the workplace. So I think there's a couple of things. So one of the things is there are different aspects of the work I do. So someone might have a training session for managers on how to manage the wellbeing and mental wellbeing, and to assess for mental ill health and refer people, not to become counsellors themselves. But then also they might want to have another session on inclusive leadership or anti-racist practice. So it's offering different things. That's one thing. The other thing on retention is that sometimes retention it's not a straight line. I think often people think, get the big projects in, I've got a retainer for 5 years. Actually, I don't want that, because I'm not part of your organization, and I mean that in a good way, and nor do I want to be. If I wanted to be, I'd apply for a job. But I think the retention piece is around that kind of gentle rolling hills relationship, that, okay, I've done this piece of work, it's going really well. It might be 2 years, 18 months down the line. How are you? Let's have a conversation. Oh yeah, actually, I've been thinking about this, and could you help with that? So I think it's that. And I think the retention part is about keeping in touch again through, if they subscribe to podcasts, they get the newsletter. They might see me on LinkedIn, they might put a comment, and then I'll follow up with a message and say, oh my goodness, it's so nice to see you pop up. Genuine, not in a fake way. How have you been? It's been a long time since we've touched base. I think the other thing about retention is, of course, you can build very positive relationships, but people move around a lot more. So whereas in my generation, we were told, you must stay in a job for 2 to 5 years, younger generations can stay, are happy staying in jobs for 6 months and they move. So again, it's about the relationship. So retention can be retained by one organization, but it could also be about being retained by an individual who moves around, but that you're retaining the relationship. And I think we need to start to see it a bit differently.
Amen to that. You're getting lots of amens out of me today, Leyla. I like that. Let me throw a bit of a curveball at you. What's your number one challenge? What's the thing that, the nut that you're trying to crack, that once you crack, you're gonna take the whole thing to the next level? You've been in business for 8 years. I like the learning curve that you mentioned around marketing. What is it now? What's that one challenge?
Yeah, I mean, I was really thinking about this because I think it's a phenomenal question, actually, particularly in this moment in time. I think for me, the challenge is around is the stability with the trend-based approach to this work. So, yes, developing and doing the CPD and improving on what I do, absolutely, but not jumping to the trends. So, for example, I have lots of colleagues who do specific work on LGBTQ plus, and they do brilliant work. So, and I do know about that. I've had training on that, but I don't specifically do work on that, even though, I think it's incredibly important, but I'm not the right person because I'm not from that community. So I will signpost people. And I think that often what happens is 1 minute you're in great demand in this world of work, and then the next minute it's like, no, we're bored of you. We don't want you. We've moved on. And there's some really good sort of videos that are like jokey videos, content on various social media platforms. So I think it's the challenges around staying very stable in this place, staying very grounded, if I can use that word. And there've been enormous peaks and troughs over the last, I would say, 2 and a bit years. So 2023 was horrendous. I'd had a pretty good run from 2017 till then. 2023 was horrendous. And things start to pick up, and also realizing that you might not always be doing delivery, but you can still think about the ways in which you communicate with the customers so that when they're ready again, you've still got that strong foundation. Can be easier said than done, and it does link to the financial strategy, especially for small businesses, which is you've got to have those reserves. It's so important, and know when to scale back and know when to invest.
That sounds like a very interesting challenge indeed, and I think if you crack that one, this is the way forward. So I'm actually interested into getting your take on this, and at the risk of getting a bit controversial, a lot of the, let's say, the culture, the trends are derived from what is happening in the US. And not so long ago, someone took precedence in that country and kind of reshifted the priority around diversity. And the idea is not to get political. I'm just really interested into the business aspect of this. So what do you see as the big opportunity in the market for you in the next 6 to 12 months, given the circumstances and the trends that we are currently facing? Like business-wise, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, and I think about this all the time. And I do think it's very interesting because I always say other countries are available. And in fact, they're doing amazing work. Why don't we look at, there's umpteen countries, aren't there, that we could look at. We just focus on that one. I think that also in the UK, things are not brilliant at all. So I think if we go back to the sort of earlier conversation that we had around, why did I start it and do what I do? It's about that positive workplace community. So yes, there are lots of things going on. And actually, I am a very political person. I won't bring it to the show, but I am, and I'm not afraid to talk about that. And but lots of people don't want to go there, and that's fine. And often if we start these conversations in the workplace, people don't know how to manage them. But what we can think about in terms of business opportunity is you've got lots of work that needs doing. You've also got people coming in with different perceptions, different lived experience, different opinions. And you need to create a community, a place where people can do that. And another thing I'm really keen about, and I've got a whole podcast episode about this, is the workplace should not be a family. If you have a wonderful family, that's brilliant, but a lot of people don't. And in families, there's a lot of hidden underground stuff. You don't generally tend to have a family communications policy, and everyone laughs at me. Maybe we should have that, but we do have it in the workplace. We can create things in the workplace. We can create frameworks. That's not to load people up with rules and regulations, but it is about saying, okay, let's create, what's our culture that we want? What's our individual culture that we bring? How can we harness it all together? So I think in terms of business opportunities, people are really flinching at these. Well, some people welcome it. So as always, I feel I'm saying everything in this and this and this because of the sort of binary polarity of everything. But people who hate it, this is nonsense, everything was fine. We can relate it also to health and safety and environmental and sustainability work. And the other set of people who are really like, I want to come to work and talk about this. Now, in certain workplaces, there'll be more space for that, and others there won't be. So if we take, for example, I did some work for UK ceramics, and it's not ceramicist artists, it's people that make tiles, that make ceramic pipes. So you've got factory workers, you've got people from certain demographics that probably do feel marginalized, and so me going in and saying, right, let's talk about equality and diversity is not going to work, and that's understandable. But what we can talk about is, right, when you come into work, how do you want to feel? Because this is a hard job, you're lugging around huge ceramic pieces. How do you want to work with your colleagues? All right, you don't really want to talk about diversity, but actually this colleague's feeling a bit rubbish. So let's think about how do we want to make sure that actually they're getting the job done. And so if we can rephrase it and rethink about that, I think that's an opportunity. Does it always come that naturally to me? Not always, because I feel really passionately about this and because of my own lived experiences. But it's not changing who we are. It's not changing our business. It's not being fake, but it's just about shifting our own perspectives and therefore our language on the area of business that we're working in.
You are very passionate about this indeed, and it's a good thing. I think I'd rather work with someone passionate about their work than not. Leyla Okhai, ladies and gentlemen. Leyla, if people want to find out more about you, see what you do, where should they go?
Yeah, absolutely. So you can check me out on my website. So it's diverseminds.co.uk. LinkedIn, my name, Leyla Okhai, Okhai, and also Diverse Minds UK on LinkedIn as well. Yes, and you can also email me. It's leyla@diverseminds.co.uk.
We'll put all the links in the description. What I can say for sure is that you've gained at least one new connection on LinkedIn out of this interview, Leyla. Me, I just added you. Leyla, thank you so much for coming on Consulting Leaders.
Thank you so much for having me. What a joy.
Thanks for joining us on this episode of the Consulting Leaders podcast. We hope you learned valuable lessons on how to grow your practice and take your business to the next level. Make sure to subscribe and leave us a review wherever you're listening to this show so you never miss an episode. To apply and be a guest on the show, click the link in the description. See you next time.